I'm good to go. Okay, tell me when you've got it open, Jen or Amy.
All set.
All right, welcome to the October 3rd meeting of Scituate Conservation Commission. A couple quick things I got to read. First, this meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Scituate in accordance with the open meeting law. And town of Scituate, Massachusetts has a commitment to diversity, equality, and inclusion. The Scituate Conservation Commission is committed to providing an environment of respect during our meetings. We ask that all members to interact in a polite manner, even when there is a disagreement. We value the participation of our community and want all participants, including the marginalized, minoritized communities, to feel welcome and respected. And we ask our committee members and all who participate to commit to these standards and support and respect the community. Thank you. So, do we have any additions or amendments to the orders other than we are going to take number 327 Central Ave and 30 Manchester first, and then we'll go on from there. Does anybody have anything they want to comment on or add it to the agenda? Okay, well, maybe at the end, I wanted to talk about maybe an informal meeting like we did last year, just start to get a consensus on that. And I guess that's it. That's it. All right.
Make a motion to accept the agenda.
So Richard, do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Doug, all in favor? Andy?
Yes.
Brendan?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Great. This will make it quick. So 327, this is continued, so we can start in with the engineer from Merrill.
Keller.
Unmuted Josh Green.
Yep,
Okay.
Josh Green from Merrill's here.
Hey, Josh.
So for 327 Central Ave, since the last meeting, we had just been asked to respond to Horsley Witten's response letter, their peer review that they gave us. We did issue a response letter. And as far as we haven't been requested for any more information, so it's really just open up to the questions for the commission.
Okay, Amy, do you want to go on that first?
Yeah, definitely. So just a little bit, because we haven't really had this project on since probably July, just backing up a little bit. So we had done, a pretty thorough review starting out in the spring into the summer with the resource areas and the project as a raise rebuild. And going through the building code and the wetland resource areas and a planting plan. We had Bob Gray look at the planting plan and the salt marsh and had pretty much closed in on the project. And then the project actually was flagged for stormwater review by the Scituate stormwater bylaw. So a stormwater application was put together and it was put out for review, and the peer review for the town was Horsley Witten. So it went back and forth between Merrill, the design engineer, and Horsley Witten a few times. And stormwater infiltration and rain gardens were added to provide water quality and capture the roof runoff. Infiltration system was added. So, and plans were revised to 829 with an O&M plan. with final sign off from Janet Bernardo and the Horsley Witten team to 9/7. And think that we are at this point ready to close. Some of the recommendations in the final close from them were no tree removal within 35 feet of the salt marsh, and also an O&M plan to be also appended to the orders. They are waiving the peak flow for land subject to coastal storm flowage, and peak discharge to will be to the maximum extent practicable. Also, the house will be conditioned to be built in accordance with Mass Building Code for coastal resource areas. And I would say we're ready to close.
Okay. Richard?
Yeah, I read the Merrill report. I'm sorry, the Horsley Witten report, and seemed to me like they were good to go on most everything. And I appreciate that the people trying to get this done had to really go to great lengths to get all the approvals needed. It seems to me that I can't find anything wrong with it now. So I'm good with it.
Okay. Andy?
Similar. I, reviewed it all. Seems like it's been pretty thoroughly vetted. We've asked questions along the way. So at this point, I am feeling good to go on this one.
Okay. Brendan?
I am with Andrew and Richard. I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Doug, you can comment on these now, right?
I can, yep. No, but I'm good with it. Horsley Witten had no, they're done with their comments
Right.
and basically signed off on it. So I think we should be good. Go.
Okay. I don't think I have anything more to add to it. Do you have anybody in the audience for this one?
If you have a comment, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen. We'll answer any questions, remaining questions. Seeing none, Frank.
Okay. So I'll take a motion to close.
Got a motion to close.
Richard, do a second.
I'll second that.
Second from Doug. All in favor, Andy?
Yes.
Brendan?
Yes.
Frank, yes. Great.
Yay.
All right. 30 Manchester. Does that need to be opened?
Yes. No.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
On October 3rd, 2022, at the 6 p.m. meeting, the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetland hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Linda Kosher for work related to raising and rebuilding a single-family dwelling at location 30 Manchester Street, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Information to access the virtual meeting is available on the agenda posted on the town website. So I'm going to go to Richard again, just because.
Isn't there going to be an opening presentation?
Yeah, this
Oh,
one's
yeah.
also Josh Green Merrill.
Thanks, Richard.
Frank.
Let's just cut to the quick.
Okay.
For the record, Josh Green from Merrill Engineers Land Affairs, representing Linda Coker. The existing property at 30 Manchester Street currently has a single family house on it. It has a couple porches with a garage and a few kind of outbuildings, mostly used for storage. There's an existing cesspool on the property that serves the single family house. As far as resource areas, there's a top of coastal bank along the existing seawall that separates the property from Hummerock Beach. And there's also a VE and an AE FEMA flood zone on the property. The coastal bank is delineated in purple and the FEMA flood zones are delineated in the yellow-orange color kind of running through the property. The proposed work on the property includes raising the existing structures and rebuilding for a new single-family house. It will be a raised structure to be above the flood elevation, and the garage to the, I believe, west, kind of southwest of the proposed structure will have living space on the second floor. The driveway in between that and the proposed shed will be pervious with the proposed Title V compliance system underneath it. Just to go through real quick, we are under the stormwater thresholds for this project. We are less than 15,000 square feet of disturbance, as the property itself is 15,000. The existing impervious area is about 5,889, and we actually have a decrease down to 5,028. Most of that is because of the existing pavement that's being removed on the property. And there's no proposed changes of slopes greater than 25%, and it is not a high potential pollutant load. With that, I'd open up to questions for the commission.
Okay, now, Richard, what do you think?
You do want Amy to go first?
Um,
It doesn't matter to me,
Let me give us your thoughts.
Okay, first of all, what a beautiful place this is. The location, it is an area that's not typically gets flooded, although they do get a lot of rocks in the front yard because it's just behind the wall, but they have a lot of space, as you can see on the diagram. I've been kind of waiting to see what would happen with this house. So my questions are more focused initially on the other buildings. You've got a kind of a garage office on the west side that is there. And I want to make sure I understand that that is not going to be raised, but it is going to be changed. Am I hearing that right? Because there are also attached metal buildings on the back of that garage. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yep, so the existing garage is being raised, and along with the metal kind of storage areas that I believe you're referencing.
Yeah.
There is a garage that's being proposed in that area.
Yep.
But yeah, so those are being removed that you
So
referenced.
essentially, it's going to be the same size building as is there now,
Roughly.
roughly. And the metal part is going to be removed, and this will be one single building that won't have these metal additions on it.
Correct.
Okay. Now, what is the proposed storage shed? That is not there now, am I correct?
That is correct.
And so that's going to be out near the street. And okay, now there is also in the backyard to the, well, almost in line with the garage, the remains of a small building. Looks like the roof only. It's I believe it's 6-sided roof that's laying on the ground. That will be taken away.
That might have been the gazebo.
Yeah,
Yep.
probably was the gazebo. That's correct.
That was currently, it's shown on the plan. It's underneath where the proposed porch was, so that'll be going away.
Okay. Do you have, I don't want to take everybody else's questions away, and I'm not doing the engineering part. There are other people here that do that better. But how, the house is good size. It also had a place, what do you call it? A terrarium or some sort of a growing area for plants that is glass enclosed. That will be removed. What I'm getting at is, what's the basic increase in overall size from the house that is being totally raised going to be?
That is existing number here. The existing building was about, coverage was 22,000 roughly, and the proposed will be 3,000.
Totally on piles, am I correct?
The only thing not on piles is the garage because of the garage slab, but yes, everything else is.
Okay, Frank, for the moment, that's all the questions I have. House needs to be, this needs to happen to the house, but it is one of the better locations in the whole area around here. So they should have lots of fun, but let's do it, get it done right.
Okay. Doug?
Well, it's not on our purview here really, but are you having to go for some variances for setbacks?
We applied for a special permit through zoning. That hearing is November 17th. So we did submit an application.
You have yet to submit an application?
No, we have.
Oh, you have, okay. And then you've got, this is a new septic system or you're
Correct.
using, okay. So that you've got Board of Health approval as well.
Yeah, I think we're buttoning up a couple comments from, but for the most part, it was just minor, add some notes.
Okay, and the sheds on piles, the garage
Garage is not.
is not, but it's got a second story living space.
That is correct.
All right, with flood vents. So everything obviously has to be FEMA compliant. So I'm assuming that the house is up on pilings? Yes, top of piles. There it
Top
is.
piles. About 2 feet above the elevation, flood elevation.
All right, I was going through the plan. Did you show like a breakdown of the impervious calcs?
I don't
you know,
have it
the
on this plan.
Is that in the narrative or anything?
Not sure if the actual hard numbers are in the narrative, but that's easy enough to provide for the commission.
I think that'd be helpful, just as a paper trail.
It is on, the commission will get a revised plan, just it has a zoning table on it. That's the only difference for the special permit that we referenced earlier. So it does actually have building coverage and impervious coverage on that. So the commission will get that plan.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. And so it doesn't trigger stormwater then.
No, from our calculations, it does not.
And do we, I guess, Amy, do we have to have the top of coastal bank verified as standard procedure, or it can't possibly change much, but is that something that we're going to have to wait on? Or, I mean, there's a seawall there. I don't
Right, no,
think there's,
at this site, I mean, I think it's not coastal bank so much that we're concerned about. This is a barrier beach with coastal dune. So it's the coastal dune is what is driving the resource area. You know
right?
what I mean? There's not a real remarkable bank in this location.
Yeah,
per
it's
se.
just that's where the setbacks come from. It's not really gonna change things, but
Yeah, I mean, there is a seawall though, for sure.
yeah, and I think that's what they're holding, which I think that's correct.
It's a seawall that's been there since 1934, but it's holding up quite well.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So, I think that covers it for me for now, right now.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, following up a little bit on Richard's questions, it seems like he's more familiar with the site than I, but next to the garage, it indicates there's a covered storage and a shed that are being retained. Is that correct? So not all of the storage is being taken away down there, is that right?
I'll have to check that. I think that had to be removed. That may be a typo.
Okay. Well,
I will get clarification on that. I'm pretty sure it's being removed though.
great. That would be ideal. So that if it is, we can just update that. And then I may be missing it on the plan, but what will what the impervious driveway will be made of?
I know talks were whether it's seashell or stone dust or something like that. I don't think they've determined 100% what it is though.
Okay. I think that would be good to know as well. Okay, yeah, those are my two questions.
Brendan?
I'm out of questions.
Okay. Amy,
Thank you, everyone.
Amy, I should have asked you first. Sorry. We'll see if I get back on the wheel. You want to go ahead?
Sure. I mean, I'll just say that there's a lot going on the plan for sure. And this is, like Richard said, it's a lovely lot. Barrier beach, coastal dune, land subject to coastal storm flowage. I mean, you've got AE and you've got velocity zone, you've got Limois. I mean, they show coastal bank, but I really think that you've got vegetated coastal dune. I mean, I think if anything, I think it's like, what can you get to maybe make this site better? And I don't know, just a general observation for Hummerock. It seems like a lot of these rebuilds, which is great, we're getting them elevated and they're going up, which is what we want to see. And it's what they need to do to make them comply with the regulations for coastal resource areas. You know, they're going to go on driven open piles. But one of the things I'm seeing, like, as I drive along some of these streets is the parking. Like where, you know, they're putting these houses up, but where are the cars going to park? You know, and if dunes are going to keep moving and shifting and things are going to grow out, you know, how is that going to impact where cars are going to park? I mean, in parts of Hummerock, that's not an issue because it's just so developed out that it's very clear. But on this site, there is more opportunity for vegetation and so on. But it's good to see that they are, you know, replacing out the cesspool with a new Title V. DEP had no comments. It sounds like there is not Board of Health approval at this point yet. So, I mean, we do have structural plans. I'm not sure if you want to close it or you want to leave it open at this point. It's not so sure what else we really need.
I think we need to get the results of the variance meeting on November 17th.
And maybe Board of Health, so
And
maybe
Board of
we
Health.
continue it, yeah. Maybe
Can I,
continue
I gotta-
to first December meeting, and also hear about our comments, maybe.
Yeah, that's the next, if there's any butters or anybody want to comment on this, do we have anybody in the audience?
Seeing none.
Okay, so I've got a few questions here. I would like to see the calculations of the pervious and impervious areas that Doug mentioned. There's a stone wall, looks like a stone retaining wall. Is that to be retained or is that being removed?
Is that the kind of by the open deck that's towards Manchester Street? I think that's the one you're talking about.
Yeah,
That would be removed.
okay, because I'm not sure. I was looking around on the plan to see if it said that, but I don't. I see another one that's kind of that's kind of L-shaped that does say to be removed, but that one that is a stone retaining wall, it doesn't indicate that on the plan
Yeah, we
that I can see.
definitely can add that.
There's also an area that sort of comes off of the that tiny shed in the corner. And I can't figure out what that. There's another landscape, there's quite a few landscape retaining walls. So there's like a stockade fence, and then there's another retaining wall that comes off that shed that both that shed and that covered storage, in parentheses, I'm seeing that it says retain.
I hope they're being gone.
So in this plan, it says retain, so we could clarify that, but then there's a landscape retaining wall that's coming off of that. I'm without seeing the site, some of this is trying to kind of piece together why or what it looks like down there, but I'm wondering about that. And then out on the beach side, there's a concrete patio and an anchor
Mhm.
and a chain and stuff, but that concrete's planned to remain.
That I know is being planned to be retained.
All right, and there's a concrete walk that's being retained. Obviously, we're trying to eliminate impervious areas or areas like that. I'm also seeing next to where it says the proposed storage shed that's on piles, there's like a dotted line that's sort of around where the septic would be. And it says bituminous concrete driveway. That's just indicating existing conditions?
Correct, that's existing. The dashed line I think you're referring to is just the remove and replace for the septic.
Okay,
Just kind of the way it layered, I guess does look a little confusing.
yeah, so the bituminous driveway is gonna be removed?
Correct.
Correct.
All right, because I didn't see that. Maybe it's in the notes, but I'm not seeing it on the plan. Amy, can you, or do you recall, we conditioned a site on the other end of Hummerock several years ago where there was an existing garage and there was a proposed new garage.
Huey, that one?
Yeah, and we requested that be elevated.
Yeah, I do remember the exact site.
So,
And
And it
they
was
ended up
elevated.
connecting them, as a
That's
matter of
correct.
fact.
That's correct.
Yeah,
so,
96, I think.
so is this garage being on a slab on the grade there? Is that something that we can condition in a barrier beach?
Well, no, I think that ended up being elevated in a somehow. We should look at those structural plans, because I'm quite sure that it was not just a slab.
Right,
It was like a ramp up. There was a way, I don't know. It wasn't just a slab though, Frank.
right. That's what I remember. So maybe we could take a look at that.
Yeah, that's exactly the project I was thinking of too. That's funny, yeah.
Could I just make one comment on that?
Sure.
A question, I guess. Did you just require it to be above the flood elevation? Because the garage slab is currently above the AE flood elevation. It's proposed at 13.5 and it's within a 13 zone.
I think that for us, Josh, it was a matter of what we're trying to see these things being able to allow water to flow through. And we know that they can't necessarily get up high enough. So I don't know if it's applicable on this site. The other site could have been different and the elevations might have been different. So that's why maybe we could take a look at what we did at that other site and see why. It's been quite a while, so I don't remember all the particulars. But I think the goal was in that one to not divert water or block water through that. And again, I'm just trying to look through this plan where I can see the old foundation of the house. I mean, the house is definitely considerably bigger and there's other stones and things, but I'm assuming all that's going to get cleaned out. So this site's pretty clear. Richard, how is most of the site vegetated? Is it lawn or?
In the front, on the wall side, on the ocean side, it's grass. That pad you referred to where the anchor is a small pad, and if it weren't there, the anchor would probably be underground by now. And there's a chain that goes with it to the anchor cleat. So it's big, it's huge. It's a kind of a landmark actually. But otherwise in the front, it's grass and plants in the front of the house. Nothing in the back that I recall in particular. But it's essentially a big grass lot. And the only issues I recall them having is in the storms. I've never seen water up that high, but rocks do get thrown into the yard, and the previous owners were always at the end of the winter cleaning out probably a ton or more of rocks from the yard, but not from the house.
Okay, it looks like the yard's about 3 feet higher than the beach.
Oh, easily. It's more like 6 feet higher.
I mean, the grade, it's saying that the beach is like 12, elevation 12.
Yeah, but the wall is pretty high right there. There are other places on the wall closer to where I am where the beaches come up higher, closer to the top of the wall, but there it's a pretty good drop.
Okay.
Like 3.5 feet or so.
Okay, I'll go with 4, but something like that. Yeah.
All right.
Do you want to take a look at this site, Frank? You want to do a site visit on this one?
I'll definitely take a ride down. I mean, if any of the other members are inclined, and I mean, for the most part, it seems like they've got a lot of this coming along, but I think we have with the ZBA hearing coming up, if we could schedule something soon,
I'll
or
go.
I'll just make a point of going. At any rate, it's a busy plan and it's kind of overlaid.
I
And
agree. There's a lot going on. And I think like the site plan with the way the walls are drawn on, it's confusing to like picture it in your brain that this is actually a driven pile site. You know what I mean?
yeah. No, and I'm sure, I mean, that's a positive. You have a house right now that's
Yeah.
a regular foundation and now it's going to be on driven piles. So,
Right, because yeah.
so
because
that's
of the dark shaded one, but that's going away. I don't know.
right. Well, I think what's really had to see so the dark shaded house is the new house. The beige color is all open porches. And then underneath that dark color is just a square of an existing 2-story wood frame house
Mm.
that's just under 1,000 square feet. So,
Yeah, that's being removed.
Yeah.
right. So, I mean, there's pluses to that. I'm just wondering if there's anything else that would be helpful for us to know or see. There, an awful lot of this work is between the 50 and 100. There's already a house there, but they're substantially increasing the size of that house in that area.
Mhm.
All right. I mean,
Isn't that another threshold?
well, it's definitely, there's a lot of it that's in the 50. There's all that proposed porch is in the 50. The other house, there was maybe 2 feet of that house and a little bit of a landing that was in the 50. Now you've got a couple sections of the house plus all that porch that's in the 50. Right?
Yep.
Well, and so where are they parking?
Oh, Amy, if you look to the west of the house, but either the old house or the new one, and to the right of the proposed storage, that's all, and in front of the current garage, that's all pavement right now. And if I heard it correctly, the septic is going underneath where the pavement is now, but then it will be covered with
Pavement again.
stone. No pavement. No,
Okay.
no pavement. If I heard that right.
That's correct. That's where most of the reduction comes, is on the west side of the
Right.
property.
But so they'll be parking between these two storage sheds.
Correct. That would be the intent. So
And that's ample parking for
It's big, yeah.
a house of this size?
I would imagine between that and the garage.
Right now, before that proposed storage, and I may have questions about that later, but there's probably room for 6 cars there right now.
Sounds about right.
Is there any mitigation offered, Josh, for the work in the 50?
There isn't currently, but we can certainly look at that.
Okay. Yeah, does anybody else want to actually see the physical site? I mean, I don't mind going down there. I can grab Richard something.
Not hearing you, Frank. Is it me?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can
I
hear you.
can.
There you
Okay.
go.
All right.
Does anybody want to go see the site? I bet Brendan does.
I'm always up for a trip.
I'm always up for a trip.
And
All
I
right, let's
bet
do-
Andy does. Yep, Richard, Andy, Doug.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Let's see what we can,
Okay.
if we go on a Friday afternoon, we can stop at Richard's on the way back.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to continue this for how long?
I
How
feel
lo-
like I'm hearing the first December meeting if we're waiting for ZBA to play out.
All right, well, do we want to get any other information back from the engineer sooner so that we have a chance to look at that? So do you have a pretty good list of what we want, or do we want to see them sooner with answers to some of those questions. We're only the 1st of October right now.
Yeah,
I guess I don't want to get to the end to December and then say we got 6 more questions, I guess is my point.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see it happen sooner. And I mean,
So you
it
wanna
sounds
say
like there's not
November
really a whole
7th?
lot.
Yeah,
Wanna
let's do November 7th. Josh, you've heard some of the things we're interested in. We'll try to go to the site. If there's anything else we want to get from you, we'll try to get it to you ASAP.
That sounds good.
All right?
Okay, and I'll
in the
jot
meantime-
down some notes. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
and you kind of got a feel for what we're looking for, and certainly that issue of the mitigation is important.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, take a motion to continue. Let everybody jump at once.
So moved.
Second that.
Okay,
for Brendan.
motion by Doug, second by Brendan, all in favor. What did I do with my list? Richard? Richard's having a hard time hearing me.
No, I'm good. That's fine.
Because
Okay.
the wind in Hummerock is strong tonight.
There
It
you go.
is.
It takes a long time for the voice to get down there. And Andy,
All
all
right, all right.
Yeah.
right, thanks. All right, thank you, Josh.
All right,
What-
thank you.
what-
Have a good night.
What
Thanks,
date was
Josh.
that moved to?
The 7th.
November
Thank you.
7th.
Thank you.
Okay. We're gonna go back to Jericho Road, right?
Do we not need a motion to actually continue New Driftway?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do.
I make a motion to continue 7 New Driftway to October 17th.
Speaking of motions and stuff, we voted that, right? To do the.
Yeah, you
7th?
did. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, I second it.
all right.
And I said,
Remember how
and I
fun-
said yes.
Remember
after I
how
did a-
funny that was?
Yes, I do. I get it. All right, 7 Driftway.
Continue to 10/17/22.
That's a motion by Richard,
Second, Andy.
second by Andy, all in favor. Doug,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes,
and Frank, yes. Thanks for that.
See how confused you get without any women around?
Let's-
Oh, boy.
we still have 2.
Don't.
I just read something that you're supposed to be more.
Yeah, don't get yourself in trouble now, please.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's
Okay.
not do that. So how about Jericho Road Boat Access Facility? Where is that?
And I'm gonna unmute Jeremy.
Yeah,
Just after you read it. Okay.
okay. On 10/3/22, 6 p.m. the Town Hall, Situate Conservation will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Situate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of the Town of Scituate for improvements to the boat ramp, parking lot, lighting, and miscellaneous floating dock and gangway repairs at the Scituate Harbor Public Access Facility on Jericho Road. Scituate, abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Information access to virtual meetings available on the agenda posted on the town website. Okay. So we have Jeremy. Can
Jeremy?
somebody unmute Jeremy?
Thanks. I clicked back to mute on accident. Thanks, Amy. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the intro. My name is Jeremy Packard with Both Infrastructure and Environment. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Office of Fishing and Boating Access, as well as the town of Scituate. They have a project, the Jericho Road Boat Ramp here. They propose, it's really just a laundry list of maintenance items on the site. Interestingly enough, none of them have to do with the actual ramp itself. It's really all supporting the infrastructure and the facility around the ramp to continue to provide access to the public. So I'll start the proposed work. Oh, for the record too, the project has been assigned a DEP file number 68-3017. So I'll start with the proposed work. I'll start on the landward side. And do you guys allow me to share my screen, or should I just talk off of what I see up now?
Off of what you see, Jeremy.
Okay, all right, sure. So Amy, if you could just scroll down just a little bit to the bottom of the page, just to show the existing floats. Yeah, there we go. All right, that'll be enough there. So starting from the floats and moving landward, on the floats, we've just got a couple items that need to be repaired. Both transition plates for the gangways they've either come off or been lost or deteriorated. Both of those need to be replaced. We have a single pile hoop pile guide that needs to be replaced around the existing timber pile. There's a light bulb that needs to be replaced with an LED bulb. Those are all pretty minor items out on the float area. Moving landward, we have another transition plate up at the top of the gangway. That along the shoreline itself, it's an interesting, I guess, shoreline protection setup they've got here. They have it's a riprap mound, say like a revetment, and then on top of that is the actual seawall itself. So the riprap mound that the seawall is built on has just kind of spalled a little bit. There's some areas where we've had some erosion, and we're looking to just perform some spot repairs on the riprap voids that exist on that seawall foundation. So there's really 4 areas. 2 are right in the corner of the ramp itself, and then 2 are probably, say, 100-foot offset on either side of the ramp. And so all we're looking to do there is take out the loose stone, replace with, fill the voids with some type of grout, small aggregate grout, and then replace the stone back into those voids, just to maintain the existing integrity of the seawall foundation. No larger stones. We're looking to perform all work. Actually, is proposed to be performed in the existing authorized footprint. So a little bit of riprap repair there. As far as the seawall itself, there are pretty large construction joints on the existing seawall, like inch and a half or so. And what we're seeing is the fill behind the seawall is actually coming out through those voids. And so we're looking to just install some joint filler in the existing seawall joints, just as a stopgap measure against the continued erosion there on the landward fill. On the back side of the wall, we propose to excavate and install geotextile just down along really to about 3 feet of depth. On the second page of this plan set, there's a detail that shows just the excavation and the geotextile being placed along the landward side of the seawall and continuing down to a certain depth on the landward side of the riprap itself. And that's just to stop the loss of fill through the existing gaps in the riprap. So heading landward from there, really it's just the repaving of the existing parking lot, replacement of the lighting. So the existing lighting was old and frankly causing a bit of a safety hazard. So in planning for this work, they have already removed Office of Fishing and Boating access, just worked with the contractor directly. We weren't even aware the work was happening, but they took down the existing poles just because they were in such bad shape. They didn't want to have the issue of them falling or anything, or have become refuse during a storm or anything like that. So those poles have been removed. So we propose to replace the existing parking lot lighting with new fiberglass poles, foundations, conduit, the whole nine. And but it's still just replacement of the existing system that was already in place. And finally, there are 2 catch basins in the middle of the existing parking lot. So the parking lot will be repaved and maintaining existing drainage patterns that drain to these catch basins in the middle of the parking lot. But in both of those catch basins just have an outlet pipe to point discharge outfalls on the seaward side of the wall. There's no treatment currently at all in place on the site. And so what we propose to do is install oil and grit separators in line with the existing catch basin outfalls, just to collect some of that sediment and, whatever oil runoff or anything from vehicles and boats that there may be on the parking lot to collect that in that separator, not allow it to enter the waters of Scituate Harbor. And then those oil and grit separators will be cleaned by the DPW on a regular interview, probably twice a year or something like that. Whenever they typically do their other ones around town. And so that's really the gist of the project. We have there's no work in heritage, so there's no, in habitat, so there's no NHPs, no MISA filing necessary. DMF did comment. They proposed a time of year restriction on the work, I believe May 1st through the end of July. Erosion controls around any kind of excavation, that's standard. We don't propose to use a barge. If we did, that they would just have, they would want that barge only in place 2 hours on either side of low tide. No storing material in a title, that's standard. And they also request that no concrete trucks be washed on site. And that's something we can certainly work into the construction bid documents. The project site lies within land subject to coastal zone flowage. It's all within the buffer zone, which is why that's not shown on the plan, and is adjacent to land under ocean. And that's all I've got.
Okay. Amy?
Yeah, so, yeah, Jeremy, it sounds like a great project for the town. And I mean, I don't really have a lot of questions. I also did note the DMF comment letter with the time of year restrictions, and also noted DEP's comments for a possible Chapter 91 license. Was that something that
Yeah, that's a pretty standard comment they have on, anywhere with, that may
Over
be
the
in their
wall.
jurisdiction. But yeah, I mean, the wall was built in the 30s. We have the existing license plans. We would probably send a notice of maintenance to them and just let them know we were going to do the work. But
yes, it's a maintenance project, yeah.
yes, right.
Yeah, and everything else seemed pretty standard. So I think sounds like a great project, improvement and maintenance for the town. So yeah, so I don't have any further comment, and
Thank you.
that's great. So I'm going to recommend closing. Thank you.
Okay. Andy? Got any thoughts?
I don't have too much. I mean, it looks like a lot of maintenance of what's there. I appreciate the added treatment. And nothing really caught my eye of concern or question. So I'm good.
Okay, great. Yeah, those treatment pieces are a good addition for sure. Brendan?
I think it looks like a great project. I really have no questions.
Okay. Doug?
Yeah, thorough presentation. They left us with no questions to ask. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. It's like,
Thanks, Doug.
this is all, the maintenance like this is all covered under the existing license, right? You don't have any more.
Yes, correct. There.
That.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, that was it.
Yeah,
so
it would fall under the existing license. They don't have a modern license that has the language in there that says that they are required to maintain. But it is licensed, grandfathered basically, and yeah, so it's all just standard maintenance work.
Okay, so are we your only stop then?
Yes. Yeah, I would say, like I mentioned, Amy, we always submit just a memo or a letter to DEP and let them know we're going to proceed with the work. But yeah, there would be no additional filings beyond this point where we'd be seeking approval or licenses or permits or anything.
Okay, all right, thanks. No, it looks good.
Thank you.
Richard?
I really don't have any questions, but I would add, no questions. I'm going to ask a question, but a very simple one. The restrictions for marine fisheries are understandable. So do you have the date when you want to get this done?
We don't at that point. That's going to be, I'm not sure of the funding source of the project currently. I'm sure the Office of Fishing and Boating Access has a list of projects that I'm not sure if they have this one on for next fiscal year or not. So the short answer is no. But obviously we would look to just, we'd work that time of year restriction into any bid documents and contracts that we produce moving forward.
Good, thanks.
Do we have anybody in the audience?
Seeing none, Frank.
Okay, just like a few questions. So the timing, as Richard was saying, I'm assuming that they're going to try to work this so they don't disturb the boating. And you said May to the end of July. Is that a no work?
No
time?
work.
So hopefully they would be doing this off season because it's like our most critical boat launch
Mhm.
in Scituate. Who coordinates that? I mean, not that that's a
Doug
perfect
Cameron is
question.
Doug Cameron's the project manager that I'm working with over there. So him and Steve Monet are in coordination for this project. I would, even without the time of year restriction, I think we would look to perform this work on the off seasons anyway, just because, like you said, that's the time of year when people want to be using the using the site, and there's nothing stopping them from doing this. This isn't really there's no major safety issues out there. There's no reason that people can't use the site, in the nicer weather. So, yeah, we would look to perform the work in the off season anyway.
Okay, I mean, it would just put an awful lot of pressure on the boat ramp in the harbor, which is not that practical.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. And this isn't a long construction period either. I can't imagine the contractor being on site more than a couple weeks here. So it's really quick in and out.
Okay, well, am I reading that right? You're gonna pulverize or mill that whole parking lot?
Yeah, they would take that whole thing down 2 inches just to be able to put the top back on it.
Okay. Is there anything in this, maybe it's not on the plan, but erosion control and siltation? Do you have that built into the plan somewhere?
Had it. I thought I had it in the notes. I know that's such a standard item. I'm surprised it's not. So I don't have it on the site plan. I mean, I guess I could show it around the entire site. I think a more practical way to handle it would just be to add it to the notes and just say, contractor provide, erosion control, straw wattle or equal around any excavations or stockpiles or something like that.
Because I'm just like, it's kind of ambiguous where the property line is. If you go in there, there's, it meshes with other parking.
Yeah,
So,
right.
It would seem like if they had that dug up and you had a rain event or something like that, it would be easy enough to control it at the ramp because the walls are higher. So, there could be something removable or whatever right at the boat ramp. That's an easy one, but it's more those ones that would run out onto Hadley Road because that flows to the marsh on the other side. So it would probably be a good idea to have it on the plan as well as in the notes. Just sometimes contractors will fuss that they should have been more forewarned.
Yeah, or not read the note or something. I see what you're getting at. So I can show it really around the entire parking lot area, and that'll cover any stockpiles or while they're doing the work, while they're milling the pavement and all that.
Yep, that would be helpful.
Okay.
And then the same thing with like the work on the riprap and stuff. I can just remember one going south in the harbor where they had dug up a bunch of stuff, but hadn't really done a good job of controlling that. I mean, there isn't much, you're just repairing a little riprap, but just, is there something in the notes about that? Like they might have to have a boom or anything if they're disturbing a bunch of it. I don't know if that's practical there or not.
I considered adding that, but I don't know how practical it is for such small areas. Yeah, exactly. And I think our thoughts, what they would, is that they would just be kind of like almost like handwork, you're not even using a lot of machinery at this point, and it's really just using, buckets of grout and placing the stone. And so we didn't see it as a huge risk of any kind of discharge into the waters. It's not like we've got a pump truck that's running with a hose overhead or anything like that. It's not that kind of material.
Okay,
Happy to add something if you'd prefer, but
well, just some sort of general note, if there is siltation, they should address it, something simple
okay, I can come up with a note for that.
would be good. I just think we're doing something in the harbor and it was supposed to be fairly simple and it turned into more of a project, but then nobody got any booms or anything there. And then we had a pretty high tide and the whole inner harbor was all silted up. So I think if it's on there, at least it's something they have to pay attention to.
Okay.
Be great to see that redone. So that's it for me, I think. So what do you think? Do you want to close with those conditions, Amy, or what do you want to do? It's not going to happen.
I think closing with conditions would be the way to go.
Okay.
Unless you want to, what would we be leaving it open for?
Just to add those pieces of erosion control are the ones that I'm seeing, and then,
No, we're way too busy to do that. Let's close with conditions.
okay,
Yeah.
sounds
I
good.
mean, Jeremy, you can deal with that, right? Would you rather do it that way?
Yes, that's acceptable to the proponent. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, we should do it that way.
Okay,
Okay.
take a motion.
I'll try. I'll make a motion to close Jericho Road ramp and revetment repair with the conditions discussed pertaining to erosion control.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, anybody want to second that one?
Second, Andy.
All in favor? Richard,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Okay.
Great.
All right, now we're on to,
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
thanks.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Edward Foster.
184 Redwood Foster, sorry. So this is continued from 8/22. We have Paul Marabito. Ross, somebody from Ross.
This is Bill Arnberger. I just want to introduce everyone. Paul Marabito is with us, as is our other engineer, Gabe Padilla, with Joe Harold, myself, our architect, Dariv. Nicolef is here if there's any questions, and our landscape designer, Mike Kotu, is here also. So, Paul, I'll let you just bring a summary of what's up since last time.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me, Frank?
I can. Great,
All right,
Paul.
thank you. The applicant owns property at 184 Edward Foster Road. And the plan that's on the screen is a stormwater permit. What that shows is the location of the proposed dwelling and also some stormwater improvements, which we submitted a few weeks ago. The stormwater application has been sent out to peer review to Merrill. We received the first comments, I think, last Monday or Tuesday. Since then, we've responded 3 times and we finished the responses today, and Deb Keller from Merrill was reviewing them, and she did submit a letter through Grady Consulting this afternoon. She's all set with the review comments. The one thing that I want to point out, this plan shows in the upper left-hand corner of the site, it shows a proposed storm scepter being installed in the lawn area of the locust. For whatever reason, what's left off the plan, we'll add it there's another storm scepter that we proposed. We talked about this about a month ago with the commission. We're also going to install one in Edward Foster Road on the harbor side of the last catch basin, which is shown on the plan. What that'll do is depict as well before it goes into the harbor. Going back to the house, as you know, the commission issued an RDA to allow the construction of the foundation for the house only. That work is underway.
Oh, yeah, it is.
The remaining work would be to install the 2 storm scepters I just spoke about, and also to finish the work on the proposed pool area, which is on the water side of the house, as well as the landscaping, which is shown on the concept plan that was prepared by Sudbury Design. There's very little change in the grade. And the main reason for that, I believe, is that the FEMA flood zone is elevation 15. About 70% of the house is outside of that. It's on the uphill side of it. However, the basement slab has to be up at elevation 16. I think we're proposing a grade of 16.1, and that's to meet the FEMA construction requirements for new construction. Having said that, that doesn't require much regrading of the lot because of the location of the existing house and the existing grading that was there prior to the removal of the existing dwelling and garage, which was done under a demolition permit issued by the building department 3 or 4 months ago. There's a revetment that's both offsite and onsite. That is not a coastal bank. It's considered to be a coastal engineered structure. I think it's section 27.1 in the DEP regulations indicates that a revetment is a coastal engineering structure and is not considered to be a coastal bank. And for that reason, we don't have any coastal bank on the site. The contours didn't lend it to that. The other thing I mentioned is that the owner, Joe Harrell, did walk the site with Deb Keller from Merrill, and I believe she told him that this site did not have a coastal bank. So having said that, the only resource area is the land below elevation 15, which is land subject to coastal storm flowage, for which there are no performance standards under the DEP regulations. The stormwater application, as I mentioned, has been completed. That takes into account the increase in the impervious area. That increase in volume will be treated on site and discharged into the tidal water. As you may recall, the commission did vote to grant the waiver to allow us to do that about a month ago. The only alternative would be to bring in quite a bit of fill to raise the elevation of the land to treat the water on site. So as part of the mitigation, we agreed to put a storm scepter in the street as well as on site. So the water leaving this site as well as Edward Foster Road would be treated prior to going into the harbor. I think with that, I'll end and answer any questions the members may have. We also have on board a representative from Sudbury Design Group that can answer any questions about the landscaping and some of the site work. So at this point, I'll stop my presentation and I'll turn it over to the commission.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Amy, do you want to start this one?
Sure. All right, so like Paul said, things are happening out there. And the stormwater review is underway. And it has gone back and forth a few times, so that's good. Lots of progress is being made. Yeah, so things are going in the right direction for sure. As far as resource areas, I don't know, as far as, there's definitely, there's some kind of an intertidal beach at where the beach is. So, I mean, I agree that we did have Deb look for coastal bank, and I think Paul did an analysis for coastal bank based on slope on the property, and we have ruled out a secondary coastal bank based on topography on the slope on the property. And I also agree that the revetment or the engineered structure would not be considered a coastal bank. But as far as other coastal resource areas on the property, I mean, the property itself can't exactly see on this screenshot, which is shown here, because the property actually goes out further than what is shown here. If we had an aerial, we could see that it actually, goes a little bit further out, but there is beach. And as you go further down on the slope, there is some buffer to that resource area. But up here on the hill, I mean, I think we're getting out of it. So I think I would agree that primarily you're just dealing with land subject to coastal storm flowage. So which brings up that, so, we're reviewing this under the Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands bylaw. And then you're also looking at it under the stormwater bylaw. And since we are making progress under the stormwater bylaw with them incorporating, their infrastructure and in treatment for runoff, that seems to be going all in the right direction. I think that you could be going in the right direction of having certainly an approvable project. I guess that one of the things I would want you to be taking a look at would be the landscaping and probably the patio area in the pool, and any, I guess, addition of walls or other features that might redirect water or otherwise impact stormwater or flood waters, redirect it, that type of thing. But I don't know, that would be the main comment I think I would have at this point. Frank.
Thank you. I see Deb Keller's hand up in the corner. She's been our peer review engineer. I'm wondering if we want to hear from Deb first before we move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was unaware Deb was on the call. Okay, sure.
If we can unmute her. Deb,
Hi there.
good evening.
Wasn't sure if you needed me or not, so I figured I'd hop on and listen.
I'm
Thank you.
glad you're here. There's a lot going on here and you've been on the site, so that's helpful.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Deb, for the record, Deb Keller with Merrill Engineers. So it is correct. I did meet the homeowner on the property. We did walk it, as Amy mentioned. We talked about verifying that there was not a second coastal bank up near where the existing home, sort of up or on the higher side of the property, that there was not a second coastal bank, and that looking at the coastal bank figures in the DEP regulations, it didn't quite meet those requirements to be called a second coastal bank. We did go through a couple of rounds with the stormwater. I think everything that was described is accurate thus far. We did ask for a few details to be added to the plan, which have been added to ensure one of the, in particular, would be swales along on property along both of the sides of the property, so the east and west along Edward Foster and the abutting property, just to ensure that all of the runoff from the upper portion where you have most of the development, meaning the driveway and in the home itself, are directed down to the low point where they are providing the pre-treatment structure, so that you get do get the pre-treatment. We did go through sizing that to ensure that you were getting the proper amount of treatment through that treatment structure, as well as they've added a roof dry well system to help encourage recharge on the site as much as possible. And I think the only thing left that I had mentioned in my letter is that I wanted to make sure that the commission received a complete operation and maintenance plan that included both the pool maintenance and the CDS store pretreatment unit maintenance, manufacturer's maintenance documentation, to make sure that that's all packaged in one document so that that could be carried through for the property.
Okay, I don't know that I've seen that, but maybe Amy.
No, Frank, I haven't had a chance to look at anything that has come in the last couple of days, so
Sure.
I'm pretty sure we do not have any of that yet.
Okay. I thank you, Deb. Deb, can you stay on for a bit so we go
Sure.
through numbers? That'd be great. Can I just, before we get started, just one question. I'm looking for just something simple like the 50 and the 100. Is that on a plan that I'm not seeing?
No, we don't show it, Frank, because there's no coastal bank. And the 15-foot contour, which we show on the plan, we show the zone AE 15 and the uphill side is zone X. So the only resource area would be land subject to coastal storm flowage.
So that there wouldn't be a 50 and a 100 from that
From,
revetment, Paul?
no, because in the DEP regulations, Frank, where they talk about coastal banks, they specifically mention that a revetment is a coastal engineered structure and it is not a coastal bank. That's why on the plan we submitted, we show that type of revetment as being a coastal engineered structure. And we did that so it follows along with what's in the DEP regulations under, I think it's section 310.27.1.
So
I also verified that with Stan Humphreys at the outset of the project, and that he was the one who suggested we put that notation on the plan, which we did do, showing the Tapley revetment to be a coastal engineering structure.
So the resource area is everything below elevation 15.
Yes,
Okay, I think that's important for the commission to know.
yes.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Doug, you probably can fathom this better than anybody. Do you want to start with this one? I think that might help
Sure.
some of the other members.
Sure, I was your question was, it's hard to believe that there's not an offset from the Atlantic Ocean. But
But if you take the elevation 15, then, everything on the lower part of the yard is in some sort of jurisdiction.
yeah, I get that. And we don't,
Yeah, there is. It's just, it's hard to see it from this plan. So maybe I'll screen share a different plan.
Okay. All right, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Doug, go ahead.
yeah, no, that's okay. But I get it. I'm anxious for them to complete, or hopefully they were years ago working on some regulations for land subject to coastal flooding, because we always have this situation where there's no performance standards for that. So my big question, I'm going to feel like an idiot here, but the storm scepter improvement we're talking about, where is that on this plan?
It's in the upper left-hand corner, as you see it on the screen. There's an existing yard basin. It's on the lot itself.
Oh, okay, it's on the lot itself. Okay, I'm looking on my own screen where I
Okay,
can
Just
zoom
go to
up
the
here a
left
little
with the
bit.
arrow. You move the arrow to the left, down a touch.
Okay, remove catch basin, replace with storm
Yeah,
scepter.
exactly.
Contractor to verify and, okay, gotcha.
And from there, there's an existing pipe that goes over to that catch basin.
It outlets to that catch basin. Okay,
Yes,
I
it
see the
does.
arrow flow. Yep,
And what we're gonna do is add a second storm scepter on the harbor side of that catch basin. We'll leave the existing basin in place and just add one on the existing drain line. What that'll do is to pick up the runoff coming down Edward Foster Road from the top of the hill. That system in Edward Foster Road, it's a basin to basin system. The last catch basin is shown on our plan, and from there, there's a pipe that goes out to the harbor. So the water exiting Edward Foster Road would also be treated. And that was part
Yes.
of our proposed mitigation.
yeah, I think that's a great idea. And it is clear to me that there's, on the Edward Foster Road, it looks like, you know, there already was kind of an existing swale that headed down in that direction.
There is, you can see it with the grading. It's going down the right side of the road as you look at it.
Yep.
Because it's all going to that one basin on the right side.
So originally that other drain manhole, what was that there for?
I think that was some kind of a yard structure that the previous owner had installed some time ago.
Okay, there's not like, there's no other additional outlet that you have to deal with from that.
No, not that we know of.
Okay. So that, yeah, that looks pretty clear that way. I'm a little, I guess, I'm gonna ask, we don't have to talk about this further, just to have, there's no real topography on the east side of the property line, because you're on someone else's property, I get that. But you talked about a swale on that side to ensure the water keeps going. There's that existing foundation that still remains, correct?
The existing foundation of the house?
Yeah, there's like a little retaining wall left there that the AE zone jumps up over. Here's my question. My question is really just to ensure, I just want to make sure that there actually is adequate swale on that side, so that particular abutter doesn't have water diverted. I'm looking at the grade lines, like say like 21 contour and the 22, which are really, by this plan, they look like they're headed right towards that house. I want to make sure that.
Well, the grading, when the landscaping is put in that area there, it'll all be directed down to the lower part of the lot and over toward Edward Foster Road. In fact, when you get further downhill, the abutting property is also shedding water onto our property. It's just the nature of the way the grading is in that lower
Yeah.
lawn area. So some of their water will also be picked up and treated.
You're saying that their lot is flowing from east to west?
Some of it is, yeah. In the grading on our plan shows that. We also submitted the existing conditions plan that shows what was
Yeah.
out there prior to any work being done. And if you stand out there, you can see that. I mean, you know, you can tell by eye that there's a slight slope going toward Edward Foster Road from the abutting lot as well.
Okay, so let's see.
This is-
Well, yeah, okay, I'm looking at the I guess this is the water.
Yeah, we'll be
Yeah, that's
doing
okay.
that.
I mean, we have a review consultant too. I'm just gonna ask her to just
Doug,
make sure
we'll-
she's satisfied with that.
Throughout the course of the project, we'll be doing some staking and grading for the contractor as he goes along. We'll also be doing an as-built plan to make sure the grading is compliant with the design plans and that the water does go in the direction that I just talked about.
Okay, yeah. That, it's just tight. And is there new, does the driveway, the new proposed driveway loop around and connect out the other side? It kind of looks that way, that there's a small
Yeah,
access
they.
right by the corner of the property? Yeah,
Yes,
Okay.
they have the right to pass and repass from Circuit Ave onto their property. There's a deeded passageway there, which they're going to use.
okay. Okay, but that little portion right there, that's new, that, oh, so that connects it through.
Doug, this is Deb Keller.
Yes, hi, Deb.
Two things to add, right where that driveway connection to Circuit Street. You don't see it on this plan, but there was an existing garage in that corner of the property that blocked them from making that access. So that's my understanding is that garage is being removed as well. And then secondly, they have done, and I was provided a revised plan that shows a little bit more of swales on both sides of the property. We're not seeing it on this plan, but they tweaked the grading a little bit to show more of a defined swale on both sides there. So hopefully that will get through to the commission so that you can see that they make sure that we get those swales and direct the water not onto the abutting property.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, okay. So that's that, and I'm not doubting that, just it's hard to tell
Sure.
from the plan, so just want to make sure that that's taken care of.
Doug, you can
that
digest,
looks good.
You can digest this for a bit. We can work through.
Yeah, why don't you work through other people, but yeah.
There's an awful lot on this plan, so.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll get a indigestion if I had digested anymore. If I could.
We'll give you a break for a minute so you don't have to eat too fast. How about Richard?
Yeah, it was very busy there this morning at 7 o'clock. No, I don't have anything that wasn't brought up by Doug and that I've thought of so far.
Okay. Andy? And again, you can listen to hear what we have here, and anybody can jump back in as things pop up.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've reviewed a lot of it tonight. I saw the back and forth before the meeting. So I guess I agree with the assessment. We're moving in the right direction, and I don't have additional questions at this point.
Okay. Brendan?
I'm not going to have additional questions right now.
All right. Do we have anybody in the audience? We have a hand raised. I think that's the architect, landscape architect, Mike Kutu.
Okay, Mike, you're on.
And just a little bit of irony here. When I renovated this property for the former owners 30 years ago, and Mike was the landscape architect for them.
Right, that's right. I have intimate knowledge and they've torn out all my work, so.
It was heartbreaking, Mike, but
it was, absolutely.
I'm sure it'll look as better.
It'll look spectacular when we're done. Let me introduce myself, Mike Kutu from Sudbury Design Group. We're the landscape architects for Joe and Katie Harold. We've been working on this with the architect and trying to come up with a site plan that works and meets the Harold's needs. I just wanted to cover a few things that the commission has expressed some concerns or had some questions about. You know, as Paul stated, we have sited the house in such a way that it sits above the 16 elevation, and that's dictated a lot of how we've had to handle the grades and the spaces coming off of the house. So we have designed this with a series of retaining walls that allow for a platform for functional space for the family with a swimming pool, at the same time allowing for walkouts on either end of the house on the north end, on north side of the building. We've done this, however, diligently cautious and aware of the grading and the streetscape along Edward Foster Road. We really have done this in a way that will really not overly change the character along the streetscape. And we feel as though we've done it being very sensitive to the neighbors and budding properties. The lower lawn, as Paul said, we've avoided the need to have to fill that, but keeping a very natural grade down below. The retaining walls that hold the pool up serve multiple purposes that are kind of important from a design standpoint. We've terraced the areas coming off of the house. There's an area of a porch that's basically at first floor level. It steps down a little bit down towards the pool, then steps down again at the pool, and then the retaining walls hold that grade up going down to the lower lawn. That wall, the major wall, provides a platform, but it also is being utilized as our pool enclosure requirement because it's a non-climbable structure and eliminates the need for additional height of fencing and things like that that would impede views not only for the Heralds, but for their neighbors. So we've tried to manage this in a way that's has an aesthetic to it, functionality to it to meet the Herald's needs, and with great sensitivity to the adjacent lots. In terms of the pool equipment is going to be located in the basement of the house, essentially, in a bunker below part of the house. The filtration system would be a cartridge system that would not require backwash. It would be done by changing out cartridges. The water purification would be handled through a salt generation system, which reduces the use of chemicals of primarily chlorine. So we're using salt generation to create natural chlorine, which is a much more environmentally sound technique. We think those are all really good, positive things, and an improvement, quite frankly, from the pool that was there. One of the other major issues that I've heard addressed is the impervious. If you look at the plan, and I don't know if Paul submitted the color-coded plan, but if you look at it, we tried to reduce the amount of impervious, but we're limited because our main terrace up at the house is coming under the porch and has a basement below it, so that can't be any kind of porous paving of any kind. We are proposing on the north and the east side of the house a substantial amount of wood deck, and that wood deck essentially is acting as a porous paver. There'd be crushed stone all below it, which would allow that water to slowly infiltrate. Approximately 38% of the paving on the sitting deck areas or spaces on the north and east side are, in fact, I would consider them to be a porous material, being wood decks.
There we go.
Let's see if there's any other notes. Essentially, those are just some of the things I wanted to point out to the commission as they start generating their list of questions. But I'm here if you need any other answers to anything else. I'll be happy to help.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Where were we? Asking for any abutters? Anybody? Do we have anybody in the audience? Deb? Does Deb want to add something to this point?
Thank you, Frank. Just a quick question. Out of curiosity, the stormwater plan didn't give an elevation for the pool. What are the elevations of those retaining walls wrapping around the pool?
10. 14.
I think Mike has an answer for that. He's got his hand up. He's talking and he's muted.
Do we have him muted or is
Yeah,
he?
there he goes.
I got it, Frank. Thank you. So the main floor of the house is up at 26. Our pool elevation is down at elevation 21. So the pool is 5 feet lower than the finished floor of the house. And then it's another approximately 5 feet from the pool elevation down to the lower lawn. That gives you a rough idea. So that lower wall is approximately 5 feet high. that holds the pool up. And then it steps up, there's a secondary wall, and then on the house side of the pool, there's a raised wooden deck, so that it gets us another 21 inches up. And then there's another wall that brings you up to the main terrace, which is at the house. So it's really a terraced system of retaining walls, but the main wall down at the lawn is about 5 feet tall.
Thank you.
Deb, is that sufficient? Is that something that you should have on a plan?
I was just more curious. I don't think it impacts the stormwater per se, but I just was looking from just a curiosity to see how high the pool was with regard to the rear lawn.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
But and the walls are generally significant to our discussion for land subject to coastal storm flowage though, right,
Sure.
Frank?
Yes. Okay. All right, where are we with any of the other members? I've got a couple of questions. So Paul or Deb, maybe both of you. Part of this project with this coastal storm flowage and the flooding, we talked about the applicant's going to leave the lower lawn, I call it the lower lawn, down where the existing shed is, without filling that. And having worked on a number of these houses across here, what tends to happen is when there's overwash from the storms, it comes over the revetment starting much more to the east. And that water that washes over flows towards this property, and it actually fills up that lawn area for a time before it has to be a pretty big storm event. And then that water would actually flow over onto Edward Foster Road. So almost all the water from that whole area runs into this yard. And as Paul pointed out, there was a manhole there, and then there was a drain that went to the basin. And I think part of this project, with the applicant willing to do these storm scepters, is a pretty significant contribution to this project. But I'm wondering, how do you size those, Paul or Deb or Doug? How are you able to ensure that those scepters are adequate for that?
So I looked at it more from the site perspective than from an actual flooding perspective. So Mass DEP through the stormwater regulations has a little pamphlet where you can convert your water quality volume, which you're calculating from your impervious area on the site, to a flow rate. And you have that flow rate, you can compare that to the manufacturer's data for the unit that you're looking at to make sure that that flow rate is treated before you have any overflow. So that's the sort of like the first flush or that can be treated in that structure. And then you have the larger storm events where you have what they call bypass through that structure and then ends up going through the remainder of the closed drainage system. So you wouldn't really be treating the flow that you would be getting from the flood, like from coastal flowage coming over the wall. In that area, you'd be getting the lower storm, a 1 or 2 year storm, that the runoff from the actual site coming down off the yard into that catch basin, that would be the flow that you're treating.
Okay, so I'm not an engineer, and Doug and you, Paul, can look at this, but I'm looking at the drain basin that's in the yard, and it flows into the catch basin that's on Edward Foster, which already receives water from some others that come down Edward Foster Road.
Mm-hmm.
So is it possible, would it make more sense that when the applicant's also offering to do a storm scepter on Edward Foster Road. Am I right, Paul?
Yes.
Okay, so if that storm scepter on Edward Foster Road was in place and then the discharge from the yard went below that, I guess my feeling is that most of the time the road,
Mm,
the runoff from the road is going to stay pretty consistent. It's going to be the one from the yard that's going to overtop when we have some bad storms because that yard fills with water. Is there any reason that that couldn't go into the discharge pipe below that scepter so that that's not overwhelmed?
Could you, that's a very good point, Frank. What about changing the catch base, the storm scepter or CDS unit to that upgradient catch basin? That way you leave the catch basin as sort of acting more like a manhole.
Mm-hmm.
And then you won't be getting what you don't get that bypass overflow in that second pretreatment unit.
I guess that's, I mean, you guys know better than me how to make that work, but you see the concern.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Okay. Maybe that's something, Paul, you can address, Paul.
And I could talk to Deb to come up with a solution to that. I think I understand what you're saying, Frank. Right now, that lower lawn area is a bowl. It in many ways, it acts as a stormwater detention basin, and the control structure being that small yard basin is there now. I mean, after some of these storms, you'll see water ponding in that lawn, but it does drain out slowly through the existing basin, and that's on site. From there, it goes into the catch basin in the street and out into the harbor. So,
Right.
I
mean, I guess what I'm seeing is most of the water that runs into that yard, again, I'm not an engineer and I'm not a scientist on this, but it's water that overtops the seawall, runs through the lawns and down to there. I don't see that being material that's overly contaminated. My concern is oils, animal waste, dirt, all the sort of things that are on Edward Foster. And if we're trying to make the harbor better out of this project, it would to be sure that those drains are well treated. And I'd be less concerned about the basin in the yard itself. Does that make sense to anybody?
Yeah, Frank, you're talking about the catch basin on the west side of Edward Foster Road, make that the storm scepter?
I don't know. I'm just, right now, I'm seeing there's a catch basin on the east side, and then that flows to the one on the west side, and then that flows out to the harbor. So those two basins are catching, and that's a long, steep road that, stuff will wash out. And that's the material that I'd be most concerned flushing into the harbor as opposed to the
coming off the yard.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's nice to pick up some of the stuff there, but I don't really know how much is really of that's I would consider contaminated.
So I think what you don't want to see is how you've got catch basin to catch basin. So if you put a pre-treatment unit there, you're sort of doubling up the flow that's going through the treatment.
Right.
You
Correct.
bring it up.
You're treating more, yeah.
Yeah, so if you bring it up one structure, then you're treating that flow and not having an impact from the any kind of flooding that happens on site.
I think that's I think so. I'd be I think you understand my point, and
yeah.
Take a look at that.
What sort of input does DPW going to have to do something like that when you're within a public right of way?
Well, go ahead, Amy. I don't know. I had gotten some information back when I heard about this project and talked about some of the things that would happen there. I got some information from the town engineer just because I was curious where all this road runoff went, and he gave me that. So usually they have some input. It has to be submitted to the town for their approval.
Yeah, Frank, we'd probably have to apply for a street opening permit.
Mhm.
If I can just back up, I think I think what you're looking for is something to the effect that the last catch basin on the west side of Edward Foster Road, what we could do is to put the storm scepter for the street on the harbor side of that last catch basin, and then perhaps take, and then the pipe coming from the storm scepter that's in the lawn area on the house lot, but we could tie that into a pipe on the harbor side of the storm scepter that's in the street. So the water from each storm scepter goes out into a separate connection to the pipe taking it out to the harbor.
I don't want to overcomplicate this, but I just want to,
That's straightforward.
okay,
It's simple to do.
all right. And then I pulled up a different plan just in showing where buffers are off the seawall. At one point, Paul did do a plan that showed a 50 and a 100, and there's nothing on this project in the 50 at all, maybe other than a little grading or lawn work that I can see. There is a small corner of the patio that's in the 100. It's pretty insignificant. And then as Amy points out, this pool and deck area within the areas of coastal storm flowage. But Amy, I'm not sure, or anybody, that in a lot of these cases, when we look at these things, we look to see if these structures might push water towards an abutter or something other that's detrimental. I don't see that on this project. But there is a small area that's in the 100 if you come off the seawall, but it's pretty insignificant. Am I missing something on that, Amy? Is there something else in this coastal storm flowage that we should address?
Well, so, I mean, if you look at an aerial, the property itself it's an irregularly shaped property, look kind of like a finger, it looks like an index finger, right?
Because
So
that
as you
goes all the
go-
way out into the harbor, sure.
Yeah, so I mean, if you go out, it certainly has beach and intertidal rocky shore on it, right? So I
Yep.
mean, there are other resource areas on the property, without a doubt. But up where this house is and where the structure is, I think you're out of this buffer area. I mean, if you want to get a coastal geologist involved, they might be able to get down into the into the nitty gritty of what the formation is. I'm not a coastal geologist, so I wouldn't do that for you, but I mean, we could pinpoint it. There's probably literature that the town has that might get into that, but I would say, I mean, it doesn't take probably a rocket scientist or a coastal geologist to tell you that there's some beach behind this revetment that they've got built there. You know what I mean? There's cobble, there's sediment size of various grains, varying, from sand to bigger sorted rounded cobble. So there certainly is beach material. But I mean, you've got your shed and then you've got your house that's in your pool, and that's probably more than 100 feet away. So I
Right.
think we're, for the most part, it's just land subject. And then you've got the road, you've got the cottage, which is at 196 Edward Foster. Is this property going to impact that property? I mean, that's down gradient, but I would say probably not, right? Looks like the stormwater's gonna, controls are gonna control everything that would hit there. And then I guess the guy next door at number 13 Circuit, he appears to be up gradient too. So, I mean, I think you're pretty well covered here.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with that, just knowing the area and also having, like I think I mentioned when we first opened this, that I did a lot of work on this property for the former owners. And we were just about at every corner of that. And I don't think there's any like beach material until you get below that, beyond the shed. Because we had done some landscape, pretty extensive landscaping there way back. And it was all pretty much loam, in fact, about 3 feet of it out in that yard.
Yeah, but to say that there's
Well,
no other resource area on the property.
No,
I
I'm not
would be
saying that.
false, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no,
So
Yeah.
for
No,
Paul to say that, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that point blank statement.
Yep,
You know what
I
mean?
don't, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
the experience that I've had, if there were things that were on it, it would tend to be north of the shed.
Yeah, down there, right at the water. Yeah, right at the water's edge, you're gonna have beach material and you're gonna,
Okay,
yeah. So it looks like you've got a great review underway. We're making some good progress. You got some good comments. I mean, I don't know, maybe the next set of plans and you can get some sign-offs and maybe this can get some orders and we can get this going, get it covered. Should we continue it to the next hearing? Should we continue it to the 17th or November 7th? What do people feel good with?
Bill or Paul, and in terms of, it sounds like you've gotten a bunch of things to Merrill and they've responded. So I think Amy,
Oh, wait a
Commission.
minute, Bill has his hand up, so let's let Bill, his mic
Yeah.
is off, so Bill, you're.
Well,
free to
yeah, but
speak.
Bill would want us to close tonight, so I don't know if we want to hear from him just yet.
Oh, well, if he wants us to close tonight, let's close tonight.
Jeez.
No,
Give him what he wants.
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, just from what Amy was saying, I think what has happened is, and I know the plans just say, I think the plans, and the consulting engineer has reviewed those and signed them off, albeit I know that the commission and Amy hasn't had a chance to review that. The only takeaway that I have from tonight is on the storm scepters, we want to pipe this differently, which I think, Paul, that can be done pretty promptly. So it was very straightforward, correct?
Yes, yeah, that's very simple.
Yeah, so on the next meeting, if we could, I think we can get that stuff in immediately, so we should be at the next meeting. I think we'll have all the issues covered. I think basically the commission already has those, albeit they just came today, so you haven't had a chance to review that. I understand that. So I think we'd be in good shape to get this closed on the next meeting.
I wouldn't disagree that we could continue it to the next meeting and.
Except for the next meeting is full, so let's put it on for the 7th.
Well,
Because our next meeting is literally really full.
well, the only thing that I would say towards that is, and we didn't discuss it tonight, but one of the things really appreciated with the commission, and you heard on the August 22nd hearing, the sooner we can stabilize this, weather permitting, it's much more preferable. And so that's why we're doing preparing for the foundation now. So
Well, so that's why you're already working on the foundation, Bill. So
that's what I just said.
yeah, so that's great. So you're underway, and so we'll get you on for the 7th and we can even issue orders on the 7th. How about that?
If we could do that, then I think that's great.
Yeah, that would be the goal. That would be a great goal.
All right, but let's not leave, I think, between Paul, if there's some changes with these interceptors, if we can get on that as quickly as possible and get that back to Merrill, to Deb, so that we can look at that. The other members, in the time that we've been discussing this, does anybody have any other questions or concern before we just continue this? I mean,
No,
go ahead.
I'm satisfied with questions, and Frank, you keep saying you're not an engineer or anything, but you came up with the best idea of the night, so.
I've had a few years to think about it, so.
Yeah, well,
I have a comment just about that if there's tie-ins to town drainage, that we do need the town engineer to agree to it.
So
Yeah,
We
I think
sure.
that-
definitely need something in writing from the town about
So-
that.
I think that would be the most important thing to get at, Paul. If you can maybe get together with, or come up with something that can be submitted to Merrill, and at the same time, get to DPW right away with that, so that they understand and
Okay,
don't have raise any flags, because that's what you don't want to keep having. All right. Okay. I can't think of anything else this evening, so if you want to give me a motion.
Make
Anybody?
a motion to continue to the 7th of November for 184 Edward Foster Road.
That's Richard. Do we have a
Yes.
second?
I'll second that.
That's Doug. So all in favor, Andy
Yes.
and Brendan?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
okay, thank you.
Where is the agenda? Are we Atlantic Ave? This is an RDA. Where's my sheet? On October 3rd, 2022, during the regular meeting, 6 p.m. meeting, the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a request of Kevin Douglas and Kevin Hokinson for a determination of applicability to Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands Bylaw for activities related to repairing and resurfacing existing roadways on Atlantic Drive, Barrett Street, and Seaview Avenue in Hummerock. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Information to access the meetings available on the agenda posted on the website. So do we have an applicant on tonight?
Yeah, I just unmuted Joanne Douglas, so I think that's Kevin Douglas.
It
Okay.
is.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hello.
If you want, Mr. Douglas, if you want to explain to us what you're doing.
Sure. So I'm here with Kevin Hokinson. We're both here together. So we're here to represent our neighbors on Atlantic Drive. The existing pavement on Atlantic has been deteriorating for several years. It's fraying along the edges. There was a collapse at one end of the road last year. And before what happened at the other ends, which is Seaview and Barrett, we wanted to, we're not planning to excavate the road. We're planning to put just a 1.5 inch coat on top of the road to resurface it and repair the edges and repair where the road failed. On Barrett and Seaview, they've taken more of a beating over the years because they sit totally exposed to the ocean. So they need to be regraded with 2 inches of binder and 1.5 inch top coat. So that is what we're here for. We've spoken to all our neighbors on Atlantic Drive and most, if not all, on Seaview. One of the neighbors who's been speaking to the folks up his end of the street I don't mean Seaview, on Central. He was talking to the folks on Central. Kevin and I have talked to all the folks down our end on Central, and everybody that we've spoken to is in favor of doing this. So this is the first step for us, is to come to you folks and see if we can do what we need to do and want to do.
Okay.
Kevin, what address do you live at?
Were you able to hear me? Oh,
Yes, we could. Can you give us your addresses?
can't hear you. Here we go.
Can you give us both your addresses?
All right, so Kevin Douglas, you're gonna hit mute on that one.
You lose them?
Hit muted the wrong part there.
Oh,
I know, it's not easy. Right now,
Sorry,
yep,
Kevin Hokinson, 20 Atlantic Drive. Finger.
And Kevin Douglas, 24 Atlantic Drive.
okay, thank you. So Amy, do you want to comment on this?
I do. I do. Actually, all right, so actually I sent you guys some pictures. I went out there last week and I was scoping out the project. Actually, so all right, so number one, Atlantic is a private way. And so is Seaview and so is Barrett. So it's the road that is between the Atlantic Ocean and Central Ave. And so Seaview is at the northern end and Barrett is at the southern end. And, you know, there are approximately 40 houses, you know, about 20 on the east side and about 20 or, you know, give or take on the west side.
Yeah.
And so Atlantic is approximately 12 feet wide in width, but it's actually in really good, surprisingly very good shape in its entire length, with except for maybe a pothole or two as you go towards like number 36 or maybe like towards the end, towards 36 or towards 44. Like it's actually in really very good shape. And then agree that on the Barrett Street, as it turns towards Barrett Street and as it turns towards Seaview, it's all just basically packed cobble, and what pavement had been there is pretty much washed out and gone. But the road's drivable. It's all packed down and stable. And then on either side, like on the west side or the landward side of Atlantic, the dune, because with this is also, it's Barrier Beach coastal dune, right? The dune is mostly all highly vegetated, stable, very nice condition. It's also same on the east side too, depending on the house and like if it's elevated or not elevated and how people are keeping their properties and stuff like that. It just kind of depends as you drive down the road. Anyways, so I guess I question the need for top coating the pavement because it seems to be in really good shape and I just don't really question the need. I also I don't see where this was ever permitted in the past. I think it was definitely just done sometime within the last 20 years or so. Obviously people got together and just did it. I know the town definitely didn't do it. And then as far as Seaview and Barrett, I mean, I'm not sure if the solution is to regrade it and to repave it. It's sloped pretty, you know, there's a pretty moderate slope as you go down from Atlantic towards Central. So much so that it does kind of wash out. So I guess I am a little bit concerned that, you know, when you do put the pavement back, that it might accelerate rates of erosion in the water going down the roadway there, which would go right into the marsh on the other side of Central into on the South River side. So, I mean, it would be nice if we could see, I don't know, I just wouldn't want to make it worse as far as like any kind of washout there. So I don't know, and it's just as a general comment, most of the roads in this area of Hummerock, a lot of them seem to be not paved. It's kind of a mix, some paved, not paved. I mean, I personally think that Hummerock is a barrier beach that's moving. I mean, I know it's developed, but on the other hand, it is a beach. And I think that it is certainly moving. And so, you know, if you leave it in its natural state, it's going to move a lot better. It's going to shift easier. So that would be my opinion. But anyways, that's it.
So do I have to raise my hand again to speak, or do you hear me?
I think we got you right
Oh,
now.
okay. So just a couple of things, Amy. The first thing is, I don't know about Kevin, but I never got the pictures. So I'm sorry.
I didn't either.
Kevin didn't either, but that can obviously be done at a later time. But if you could,
We live here, so we know what it looks like.
yeah, if you could send those, that would be good. So you were talking about the slope. That's on Seaview, where there's a pitch, and that pitch has been added to over time. The town doesn't plow the road for us. We have to hire individual contractors to get the cobble off the road. But the town has over time built up Seaview. What that smooth cobble, or as smooth as cobble can be, that you see on Seaview is something that the town has done to build up. I spoke with, I've met with the DBW director a couple times, Kevin, and you know, he said that that's just been done over time. You guys have a lot of excess cobble as you're doing Central, and some of it has just found its way onto Seaview. And when I spoke to him about, we're working kind of closely with him when we do the road. We want to get it done right if we do it. And what we talked about the last time I met with him was cutting into Seaview, because it is steep and it's been built up over time, and cut in and make the dune beyond it bigger with the cobble that they've added to the road over the years. On the other side, on Barrett, that's a little more level. I wouldn't say it's level, but it doesn't slope nearly like Seaview does. The Atlantic is in pretty good shape. I'll agree with you. The middle of the road is in pretty good shape, but we had a collapse in the middle of the road last year. That should probably be attended to again. I think it was a quick fix at the time, but that's where I think you might have seen what you thought was a pothole, where the road's broken up there. And the edges of the road are definitely crumbling and fraying. So it's just, we're trying to be proactive before, you know, sections of the road start to disappear like happened on the two ends. So that's our rationale for doing what we want to do. On Barrett Street, we thought the town was taking care of Barrett Street, because over the last 6 or 7 years, it's been fixed a few times. And when we got our group together, we have a group email for all the neighbors. That came up. Somebody said, well, the town's been taking care of Barrett Street. And what we found out is our neighbor at 2 Central,
To Atlantic.
Two Atlantic has repaired Barrett 3 times in the last 6 years, and he spent quite a bit of money doing it just with cobble. And frankly, he's kind of tired of having to pay for it. He's the closest one to it, so I guess he just took it on himself. But Barrett gets really, really bad. Once the winter storms come in, they're smaller. If you don't have a 4-wheel drive truck or something, it's tough to get up Barrett Street. So the purpose for paving Barrett was to take some of the pain off our neighbor at number 2, Atlantic, and to make it easier to get in and get out at that end in the future. Now, it was paved. As far as when the paving was done, I believe it was done in the mid-90s. I don't know anything about permits and how it got done, but it's both ends were paved. Barrett was paved, Seaview was paved, and Atlantic obviously is still paved. So that's why we want to do it.
Okay. I guess what I'm seeing, I was trying to pull up more of this plan. When was your intention to do this work?
We were hoping to do it next spring.
Okay. We're gonna do I guess a couple of things. It seems like there's a fair amount of work here, Amy. So is this something that we can condition with an RDA? I guess would be my first question.
Yeah, that would be a question that I had too, Frank. Yeah, whether this is more than what should be as an RDA. I did get the answer as to whether one person could condition this. Like whether it could, one person could represent all these owners or not as a paving project. And
Mhm.
that, or whether you'd need every owner to sign off on it. And I think that is possible. But I mean, I think it's, as an RDA, there's not a lot of oversight. So I think maybe an order might be more appropriate, honestly, than an RDA. Because it's just a yes or no.
So let me just explain this to the applicants. In what you've applied for is a request for a determination of applicability. So it in some cases, replacing a driveway, doing some less significant work to a home or property can be conditioned or allowed under an RDA. But if the project is deemed to be more extensive, then the commission would essentially give you a positive determination, which meant that you'd have to file a full notice of intent. And that gets more involved, but it makes sure that the work that you're doing is in compliance with the area that you're in, your resource areas. What I was going to suggest is, I think at least a few of us want to go to Manchester Street. Not all of us are as familiar with Hummerock as Mr. Harding. But and I'm happy, I kind of jump in the gun with all the other members that are on here, but if some of us are going to go to Manchester Street, I wouldn't mind taking a look at this area and sort of get an idea of the scope of what we're talking about. And then see if we need to do more. But I should actually go to the members and just see if anybody has any questions. Richard, why don't you?
Yeah, I got a couple comments more than questions. First of all, I'm not sure. The comments that Amy made about Atlantic Avenue are right on. That road, except for some patching in a couple places, really is not in that bad shape. And I'm not sure if they're maybe spending a lot of money that doesn't really need it. Seaview, interestingly, has the applicants are quite correct. It's been built up primarily by the town. Several years ago, they started actually dumping cobble back onto the beach. That was one of the areas where they would put it back onto the beach. I think that's stopped now the last few years. But in that process, a lot of cobble got put up on the road. It's actually not a terrible shape on the whole, but I would agree that something has to be done to improve it, because what's happened, although it's cobble, it actually speeds the water flow down into the marsh. And so I think it's very appropriate to see if something could be done there. And on the other end on Barrett, it is in terrible shape. It's much shorter. My concern, if it was ever to be paved, is that would also speed up the rush of water going through to the marsh. And so I think there's a lot to be talked about there. And I'll certainly attend a meeting. It certainly makes sense. And for anybody who hasn't been there, I think you do have to see it to understand the issues they're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Doug?
Yeah, I think my thinking is in line. It looks to me like there's about 1,500 feet of pavement that we're talking about. Does that sound about right?
14 is what we came up with, 1,400, but you're right. That's about it.
Yeah, so I was just wondering if, first off, can we do that with an RDA, or do we need a notice of intent? So that was just a question I was going to have with Amy to make sure we're not kind of overextending our abilities to approve things with an RDA. And then, yeah, I haven't driven out there and seeing. I certainly would be willing to go out there and take a look at it. Some of these pictures, though, look to me like it's just sand. I don't see any pavement, but maybe
it's there.
Yeah,
Jen,
okay.
can you share those pictures on the Zoom here? Doug, do you have pictures there you can share?
We only have one ability to share. It's from that.
Okay.
And I don't think I can share. And it's just, you know, a set of pictures in my email. But yeah, I mean, I can see areas where there's pavement because I can see the gas lines marked out and things like that. And
Right.
it looks like it kind of ends and turns to
Yeah, the
sand floor.
entire stretch is paved and it's in great shape, except for
Okay.
this one spot where I'm calling it a pothole, but these guys are saying that it caved a little bit. So it must have been undermined because it's a beach, because the beach is moving and shifting. So
Okay. Yeah,
it's
so
just
I
a
might just
matter
be-
of, you know, whether, I don't know. I think it's whether this is the right solution or not is what the discussion has got to be, you know? So,
Yeah, and I'm fine that they want to propose this as a solution. I think maybe they're kind of thinking like, let's get some new pavement down there and you know, be done with this for a little while. But I guess my line of thinking is this, from my experience on the board so far, that this is a bit much for an RDA. That's usually like really small limited projects, decks, and maybe additions to houses that are just barely in the buffer zone, stuff like that. But my feeling would be we probably have to have a notice of intent. This is obviously a private road, correct?
It is, all three.
All right.
Okay. Andy?
Yep, I think I'm in agreement. I think we don't want to rush this and make what seems like a solution into a worse problem. So I think I would agree.
Brendan?
Yeah, I also agree. I think it might be a little bit too much, but I'd like to look at it.
Okay.
When you guys come down, you're more than welcome. We'll have a little party after we're done with the work, of course.
All right. So
yeah. And the thing, just so you guys know, as permitters, is that as a notice of intent, it's a significant decision because it means that there's engineered site drawings that are required, like stamp drawings, and the permit process becomes more, a little bit more complicated.
Well, it becomes more expensive, especially.
Well, it does that too.
We're all footing the bill here, so.
Yeah, it's recorded on the deed for every person that owns a portion of the
I
property.
kind of forgot about that complicating part. There's
Yeah,
no,
I mean, it's
there's
very
no way
official.
to,
well,
geez.
can we do this before we jump to that, because the project's not until spring and obviously time gets away from people, but seeing that we're going to try to do a couple of site visits, maybe we could just take a ride along this when we set that up. We can continue this RDA for a couple weeks or whatever. We're not going to make a determination on that tonight. Let's just continue it, take a look at the site, see how complicated that is, and then that would help us make a better decision on whether this needs to be a negative or positive, would be my suggestion.
Yeah, and I mean, I can talk it over with my colleagues at the state on the most efficient way to permit this project, but I'm pretty sure that for resource area, they're going to agree that it's going to be orders. It's just, it does get a little bit more complicated and complex.
All right.
That avenue for sure.
Okay, can we continue this one to, is there anybody else want to comment? Do we have any other, so everybody had their say, do we have any
Abutters, raise your hands. Anybody who wants to comment, please. Seeing none, Frank.
all right, well, this is going to
Frank,
get, what's that?
Frank,
Yes.
I would suggest we put a motion in to continue this to the 7th and then have sometime between now and then, if we're going to see 30 Manchester, schedule it on the same date.
That sounds like a motion to me.
Consider it done.
Anybody want to make a second?
Like I met Andy.
Andy, thank you. All in favor, Doug
Yes.
and Brendan?
Yes,
Right. So we have email address or contact information for the applicants, right? And we can let them know what.
Yeah,
we're-
I just emailed them the photos too that I snapped while I was down there. So you guys should have those in your
Okay.
email boxes.
Okay. All right.
So it's
How does that
on for
sound?
the
7th.
7th.
Yep, but we'll be in touch about taking a look at this before that.
Yep.
Okay. Everybody's like, Mr. Douglas is talking, but I can't hear him. Do we have him muted or does he have himself muted?
There you go. Go ahead.
There you go. Go ahead.
Will we know when you're coming out? Do you want us to know or?
No, we're gonna sneak up on you. No, we'll get in touch.
Okay, so we'll
All
know.
right.
Okay,
Good
great.
night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Okay. Request for minor modification, 7 Dunbar Lane.
Greg Morse is on the call. Greg, were you just able to unmute yourself? Huh.
No, I just got a notification for the host to unmute me.
Oh,
I did.
oh, that's good. Great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep. Yeah, for the record, Gregory Morse, registered engineer. I'm representing Greg Kelleher, the property owner, 7 Dunbar Lane. This is a notice of intent that we had filed several months ago, and it was approved ultimately by the commission to allow an addition to be constructed on Mr. Kelleher's home at 7 Dunbar Lane. The approved plan is on the screen here on the left-hand side. What puts us before you tonight is we'd like to request hopefully a minor amendment to the order of conditions to allow an expansion of the proposed addition. As you see on the left, the addition was highlighted in bold, but there was an existing deck off the back of the house, and we had labeled that deck location to remain. What we would like to do is where that deck is, we'd like to construct the addition to extend over that area. So what's depicted on the right, you would see in bold is the new location of the addition. Again, it's over an area where there's an existing deck. It's no closer to the wetlands than what was previously approved. You likely recall that there was a bunch of mitigation proposed as part of this project due to previous enforcement issues. All of that remains in place. It's just the size of the addition bumps up a little bit more in size. It's no closer to the wetlands. It's over an area that was an existing deck. I turn it over to you.
Okay, Amy?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I suppose that this is minor. We really did look at this quite a lot when we looked at this. You know what I mean? We reviewed the heck out of the project and there was a lot of interest. Sorry, I just muted myself. Sorry about that. There was a lot of interest in this project, if you recall, and we spent quite a lot of time getting the project just right. So does this particularly change things? I don't really think so. I mean, you're taking a deck and you are making it house. I don't really think we should get caught up in the weeds here. I think you probably just accept it. That's what my gut is telling me. If you want me to get into it, I will think of more things to say.
Nope.
Not towards the end of the meeting. Let's see. Richard?
I guess I have the same tone as Amy had. We spend an awful lot of time on this, and I wish I could say I'm shocked that they're not coming back for something else, but it does seem minor. So,
Doug?
Yeah, I had a curiosity question about the roof line, how that works, but that's ridiculous. I think a carpenter can figure that out. I don't have to be, because it's really the same area. I guess there's a roof now instead of a deck, but I think it's minor enough.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, I guess it's minor. I guess I will say I don't know that I would consider too many more
I won't consider
minor modifications. Yeah, I think won't consider it more if we were to consider this one. And I'm also trying to, I guess, Greg, this is a question for you. The impervious, the driveway was paved and went to stones and shells, but in our bylaw, that's impervious to impervious, isn't it? So it does seem like adding more impervious here. I'm wondering about the calculations and when this would trigger a stormwater.
Sure. So how we put down the degraded areas on the plan, and we provided a letter that this is an increase in impervious area, but it's, if I can open up the letter, I think it's only a 17% increase versus a 25% increase is what triggers the stormwater bylaw.
Okay, I might have misread it. I thought it was an exchange on the driveway, but it wasn't. Is what you're saying?
I'm just opening up the letter I submitted.
Sure.
Right.
Brendan, do you have any questions while he's pulling that up?
I'm really just thinking about what I want to say. I'll just say I guess it seems minor.
Okay.
So I did pull that letter up, which has the calculations. The existing site is 1,680 square feet of impervious land coverage. That did include a paved driveway that was at the site. That paved driveway has already been removed and replaced with gravel and shell in its place, so a pervious driveway. Considering that was an asphalt driveway originally, what you see here represents a 17.8% increase. 25 is the threshold.
So I think Andy's question is, we had a discussion the other night. We've got a project, an application out on Wood Island Road or off of that Bailey's Island, where the engineers were proposing a change from, I think it was gravel to asphalt, but their argument was that had no real significant bearing because the driveway that was gravel is already considered impervious. Is that kind of where you were going with this, Sandy?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, and I wonder, Greg, we've had this discussion. You look at a road or a driveway or something that's been packed down all these years, and we know that they're really not, they don't really allow for much drainage. Maybe Doug could weigh in too. But in a lot of cases where you wind up with people digging out their driveway, removing an asphalt driveway, but putting in crushed stone or clamshells or something like that, it would seem to me like there is a fair amount of difference between pervious and impervious. Is there any distinction on that, or is it all just lumped into one category?
Yeah, I would say kind of two things for that. One, I think it does depend on what you put down for a driveway material. I think if you have a crushed stone or you have a crushed shell, which is the case in this site, that is different than if you had, say, a crushed asphalt, recycled asphalt type base, where you're going to get a lot of compaction and you will get runoff. That's not the case here. Secondly, in your stormwater bylaw, impervious surfaces does have a definition. It does include it specifically says gravel roadways, but it does
We lost you, Greg.
not say gravel driveways. So I think there's a distinction. So in the bylaw, there's a distinction of gravel driveways versus gravel roadways in the definition of impervious. And I think that makes a big difference whether it's a driveway or roadway. In this case here, it's only a driveway.
Okay. Just that, Doug, have you come across anything like that?
Yeah, I didn't actually pick up on the roadway versus driveway. So you're saying like if you're building like 400 feet of roadway for access or something like that, you said that's treated differently than a gravel driveway?
Yes, I think, yeah, the intent, I think, is where a roadway might be more compacted, it's more heavily trafficked, it might have heavier weight vehicles on it, and is probably going to be built not with crushed stone or shell, but is going to be built more of a like a crusher run or an asphalt or something.
Something,
like that.
yeah.
That's different than a residential driveway application.
Yeah, I mean, Greg knows a lot more about this than I do, but I mean, I completely agree with him that a gravel gravel road over time with all the traffic on it becomes packed so tight, it doesn't have much of a different runoff than pavement. So it's hard to have the same credit. In this case, crushed stone doesn't compact nearly as quickly and shell and everything, so the water is still able to make it through the voids. So I mean, I do think that is a important distinction.
Okay. The other thing maybe.
I disagree with that totally, but everybody can have their own opinion. I completely and utterly disagree with that.
You disagree that crushed stone won't compact?
No, I think that the stone that they are, that, yes, I think that all those materials, they all compact and they don't let very much water through, whether it's a driveway or whether it's a roadway. Over time, all those things compact.
Over time, I think you're gonna get.
That's the coefficient doesn't allow water to go through driveway, roadway. That's baloney.
But in my experience, like we are constantly giving people credit for putting in driveways that are pervious. As a matter of fact, we encourage them to do so. And we don't allow things like, concrete patios.
It's a complete game. And it's in these pervious things that it's only if they're maintained and installed appropriately do they function. So
correct.
It's all a game.
But I mean, are we wrong in doing that? I mean, what is our choice here? Are we supposed to disallow any construction of, driveways?
I don't know that we're given much of a choice. I mean, that's the one way that the state allows you to try to like improve projects is to get surfaces that are pervious, right? I mean, because development has happened. We live in a developed society, right? And there is stormwater. We try to improve conditions. So to improve stormwater and to improve infiltration, you got to try to allow things to drain. So that would be the improving pervious conditions. But I don't know. I think just by saying you're putting in a gravel driveway over time, it's going to run off just like anything else. Maybe very slightly stone and shell might let it trickle through a little bit, but over time it's going to run off.
So in this case here, it doesn't matter what the driveway is made out of, because if we're making the case that the driveway is impervious, that's the case of my letter that I was taking credit that it was an asphalt driveway in the beginning. And whether now that it's crushed stone or shell, if you said that it still is impervious, that's more pre-existing impervious on the site. So the 25% threshold still would not be triggered.
Yeah,
by
in
the
this case,
addition.
I totally agree with you, Greg. I don't think it matters at all, that, right?
Doesn't.
So there's two things, and we don't have to beat this horse at this time of night. It's something for us to consider in the future. So how are we doing the right thing with some of these driveways, or if we should be looking at some other alternatives, which happy to talk about. In this particular case, I think some of the concerns about this change is the extent of the meetings that we had and the the concerns and the alterations. We had Art Allen and very involved in this, and they were filling and all that sort of stuff. But to me, it seems like those pieces got resolved. And as long as Mr. Kelleher builds this thing the way that he's agreed to on the plan, the change on this is pretty insignificant. I mean, it's too bad that he just didn't have that on the plan when he was doing that, but I get it. Some people start to look at this and they say, oh, shoot, why didn't I do a little bit more? And whether or not this change has any real bearing on everything else that we approved on this, I think overall it was a gain for the site to get the number of things squared away that were done there, and the mitigation that Mr. Kelleher provided. So to me, this is a relatively small change, although it is a change, but I think it's something that we could do under a minor modification, as long as all the other pieces that have been agreed to get completed. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Yeah, and just so you know, as an update, Greg did bring a check in for the mitigation. He brought that in shortly after he recorded the orders. And he also shows intent that he is going to be planting out the replication area. He's excited about the project, so that's all a good sign.
Okay. All right. Well, I certainly get everybody's apprehension or concern. I just think, given the other things that the applicant has done for this to get it squared away, it's just too bad they didn't really think that piece through and put it on. But I'd hate to go all the way back again for that small area. I think we have it within our purview to allow that. That's my own feeling.
So if you guys agree, you could do a motion.
Okay.
I just want one more question for clarification, Frank.
Yep.
The wetland, well, there was replication and restoration, whatever, with the two different shaded areas on the revised with the deck to be removed and the expansion of the proposed addition. It's like just kind of a purple hatch. It doesn't go all the way to that tree.
Right.
Is that anything distinct, or is that just a drafting thing?
That was just a drafting thing. All the
Okay.
replication would remain as originally approved.
Okay, all right. If you I'm sure you recall there was a butter with.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. That's all.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion? And I'll jump at it.
Oh, yeah, I will make a motion that we approve, or that we approve the minor modification to 7 Dunbar Lane with respect to the proposed addition and removal of an existing deck.
Hey, don't make it too complicated for Jen. She's just got to write all that down. So,
Oh,
all right.
hear ye.
Do I have a second?
Second, Andy.
All in favor, Brendan
Yes.
and Richard?
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, I'll throw in some more therefores and such as.
Yeah,
No.
I think if Jen could.
Sorry, Jen.
If Jen could comment on this, she would. I wish I was there to watch her. How about order conditions for 20 Man Hill?
I vote to approve the conditions for 20 Man Hill as written.
Second.
Amy, before we vote that, Amy, can I just ask you one thing? Did we get the plantings and stuff that we wanted for that? I missed the last meeting.
Did we get the plantings
what-
that we wanted?
Is it like, I saw some back and forth
Yes.
with the planning board, the trees, all that, everything.
Yeah. Well, there's a landscape plan that we don't have it in hand, but yeah, it all went down well.
Okay,
And then also, there's orders that are not listed on this agenda, but that were pending Board of Health for Buttonwood. So you guys have already reviewed them, but we're gonna also issue Buttonwood.
okay.
Almost done.
The number Buttonwood, hold on, is 17 Buttonwood.
So maybe somebody other than Doug,
15,
somebody other than Doug could make a motion to accept the
68, 30,
orders
15.
for those.
Make a motion to accept the orders for 17 Buttonwood Lane
And 20 Man Hill.
and 20 Man Hill Road also.
Okay. And a second on that?
Second, Andy.
Thanks, Andy. All in favor, Doug?
I'm
Now we've
trying to
got-
think of a long-winded way of saying yes.
All right, and then we have one more other important item. Do you,
Wait, Brendan needs to vote.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think, okay. Go ahead.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Go ahead, Amy.
Oh, okay, so, I don't know if you have access to your email or not, but Toll Brothers, they have a new senior project manager guy, land development. Scott Michelli left the company, and so now there is a new person, and he has followed up on their bond. So we have been holding $120,000 bond for the replication area for that site to Seaside at Scituate on Hatherley Road. And anyways, we also have a completion report from LEC. They've completed 3 years of monitoring. The wetland replication has been successful. We've got Amy Ball, who agrees that the replication is successful, and they are asking for the release of, I think, 75% or $90,000. And so I mean, I think it sounds reasonable. So it's really in your court to either think about it or to just make a vote and decide. But they have monitored since 2019, which is the first year of construction. They monitored 2020, 2021, 2022, technically 3 years. They've removed quite a lot of invasives during the 3 years of monitoring. There's was quite a lot of purple loosestrife that took over the wet meadow area. But they were quite proactive in removing the loosestrife. They also had some autumn olive, which had been trying to take over when they also were removing that invasive as well. The erosion control is still in. We were indicating that they could remove that as the area is stable. But anyways, they are going to keep on top of the restoration for the invasives and keep up on the invasives, but they are technically at 75% for 3 growing seasons. So we could consider the release of their surety bond to reduce it down, if that's acceptable to you. They have not yet completed the signage which is required. So they are still required to put up the buffer zone signage, which I have spoken to Scott about, but now he's gone. But I think we need to still stay on top of them for putting up signage, which was along the buffer zone. Every 50 feet, they need to put up placards. And then also there's the vernal pool cleanup that they're responsible to do, which they were also working on that, but I haven't had a status report that that's actually been completed.
Yeah, Jeff.
And that was really it. I know Frank and I also, we had talked about the parcel of land which was cleaned up, but it's the marsh between 10th Avenue and 7th
Yes.
near Oceanside. And Frank, I was looking into that today, and Karen also looked at it and had Sherry look at it in the minutes and communicated to Jen that it looks like there were discussions, and Mr. Orenberger definitely represented that parcel was going to be donated to the land at town meeting. But I mean, I don't remember that ever being on a town meeting article, but yet when you look at it on the tax assessor's roll, it doesn't pop up. It looks like it's ownership unavailable. So I'm not sure what that means. I can ask Mr. DeVito what that means. I'm not sure if
Okay.
that means the town owns it or what.
All right. Well, I think, I'm sorry, I had a little.
That was a
trouble.
lot of information that I just spit out.
Yeah, well, my computer was going low. Doug used up all the battery.
Any thoughts,
maybe you
comments?
would-
Do you want to wait? I mean, nobody from Toll is on the call. It might be better to just get it done.
Well,
while
I don't,
nobody's
I
here,
think,
or
yeah,
what you want to do.
if we're comfortable reducing the bond for the wetlands, it's only for the wetlands replication piece. So there's still a bond for that property.
That's
right?
correct. The planning board has, I think, a $2 million bond, and they actually did just put in to reduce the planning board bond by half.
Right.
I
Well,
believe.
maybe we could talk with Karen and take a look at those couple of pieces to do with the land if they haven't changed theirs yet. But I think ours was pretty specific to the wetlands piece, which it seems like they've done a pretty decent job with.
Yes.
Do you want to have that, or do you want to cut it by two? What are they requesting?
Well, so they're requesting $90,000 in bond reduction. So we have 120, and they were hoping to get 90,000 back.
Okay.
And I mean, I think it's reasonable considering the success of the replication area. I mean, we're still, fairly displeased that they continue to have violations with respect to their stormwater permit, even today, 4 years into the build. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, when we had the large storm event, there was silty water leaving the site. I mean, it's crazy that they're still having these events, but they are with fines still going out. So, but yet their wetland replication looks tremendous. So,
Jamie, the only other part about that, I don't know if they'll link together, but I don't know that they ever cleaned up the that vernal pool area.
well, right. So Brian Spalding was lining up the company to clean up the vernal pool. And that was and Scott Michelli was on that too, but I will send an email just following up on that. But that again is not tied to the 120,000. But we can at least follow up on it with them, because I'm going to forward these comments to the new senior land rep and remind them that they need to post signage every 100 feet. They're supposed to be posting these placards, and that they're also, they need to follow through with the vernal pool cleanup.
All right. And then the other one that seems to be happening there is now there's getting individual homeowners starting to get into the buffer zone or even into the wetlands with some tree clearing and stuff, but
Right.
that
Those
gets a
are
little,
calls we don't want to have happen, and
that's
they've
getting a
happened.
little tricky because it's no longer their property, but
Yeah. So does anybody want to make a motion for the reduction in the surety bond, or do you guys want to think about it? Do you want to have them come in and present to you?
I don't think we need to hear a lot of that. I just
Because
think,
that's what's going to happen if you don't vote on it.
I
is
know.
Mr. Orenberger and the new representative is going to want to get in front of you.
Why don't you tell them that we're gonna vote on it at our next meeting? All right?
But that you don't want to hear from them at that meeting, right?
No, and we'll see if we can get a little information before that. We'll see if we can clean up. I mean, I was away for a couple weeks and I'm banned from town hall this week.
Okay, right.
so-
Okay, so, and you want more information on the status of where the vernal pool cleanup is and the status of the placards. That's
Yep.
what I'll ask for.
That
Okay,
sounds good. All right,
that sounds great.
all right. And then, so maybe you and Jen will get a couple of things out so we can try to set up a site visit for Tilden Road and
Yeah, I
Um,
sent out an email today about Tilden Road. What day works best for everybody? It works. Brendan said after 11 a.m. Any day of the week. I think like Wednesday, I have a lot of some meetings going on, but actually Wednesday later in the afternoon, well, no, maybe Thursday. I don't know what the weather's like this week, but Thursday or Tuesday or Thursday work better for me.
it
Sounds like
won't-
Penny's available pretty much any day.
okay, it won't be tomorrow, so
Okay. So maybe
um,
Thursday or Friday?
I could do something Thursday or Friday morning, and then maybe Humrock the following week or something.
Okay,
All right, if anybody could get back to Jen or Amy on that, and I'll try to answer that as well. But Thursday doesn't sound bad.
all right, so maybe Thursday for Tilden.
Yeah, and if we want to go to Collier or whatever at the same time,
Oh, yeah, good idea.
all right?
Oh, yeah, I did some really good research on Collier too, about
Okay.
that, the walls there.
Okay,
All
all right,
Okay, sounds good.
all right, well,
So,
it's nine
Just
o'clock.
about 9 o'clock, everybody.
Yep. Anybody else with anything? Okay, I'll take a motion from,
I'm gonna
Make a
say, is
motion to
everybody
close.
still awake?
I think that was Andy. Andy's got a motion to close.
Brendan
What
looks
is-
like he's barely awake.
Motion to adjourn. I
I'll
should say.
second the motion.
Motion to
We
adjourn.
got-
I'll amend.
All in
right.
favor, Richard? Richard's already gone. Doug?
Richard's
Yep,
still on another
I'm
time
here,
zone.
I'm here, and I say, yes, go.
He's
All
still in Alaska time zone.
you go. Doug?
I would like to express an affirmative reaction to the amendment.
Oh, boy.
proposal that was
Alright.
just-
Listen here. Have a good evening.
All right, good
night.
night, everybody.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Okay.